From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. NATO leaders meet in Brussels to discuss war in Ukraine. Rohingya in Bangladesh cheer U.S. decision on Burma genocide. Pakistani PM Imran Khan asks 57 Islamic countries to oppose Islamophobia. In 2021, Austria saw nearly 2,000 racist attacks. Taliban closes Afghan girls' schools hours after reopening. Madeleine Albright dies at 84. NATO meeting in Brussels in its joint statement says that in response to Russia's actions, it has activated its defense plans. It has placed 40,000 troops on the eastern flank, along with significant air and naval assets. These troops will be under direct NATO command, supported by allies' national deployments. NATO also said it is establishing 4 additional multinational battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. President Biden, who is in Brussels for the NATO meeting, also pledged to take 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. He also called Russia to be removed from the group of 20, known as G20. Rahima Khatun saw her 2 daughters killed by the Burmese military. The girls were thrown into a burning house as their village was razed to the ground. They were among thousands of victims of a brutal crackdown against the country's marginalized Muslim minority. Khatun is hopeful the U.S. designation of the 2017 onslaught against the Rohingya as a genocide will bring some justice to her daughters and others. Burma's military junta denied the allegation, and the case is currently being heard at The Hague, the United Nations highest court. But the U.S. declaration has provided hope for justice amongst many Rohingya. Burma's crackdown prompted an exodus of about 740,000 people into Bangladesh, joining more than 100,000 others who had fled earlier waves of violence. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation met in Islamabad with an ambitious agenda seeking approval for more than 100 declarations. Among those proclamations is aid for financially strapped Afghanistan and support for Palestinians and Kashmir. In an address to dozens of foreign ministers, Imran Khan partly blamed Muslims for allowing Islamophobia to spread. He said Muslims had not united against actions deemed blasphemous for fear of being labeled extremists. There is a perception that there are different types of Islam, he told the 57-nation OIC gathering. The moment you say you're a moderate Muslim, you're automatically saying that there's some extreme form of Islam. Our head of state at the time, after 9/11, he coined a phrase called enlightened moderation. I understand English better than most, but I still don't know what it means. Enlightened moderation was a term to appease those who were relating terrorism to Islam, he said.
The moment you say you're a moderate Muslim, you automatically say that there is some extreme form of Islam. Our head of state at the time, after 9/11, he coined a phrase called enlightened moderation. I understand English better than most. I still don't know what it means. Enlightened moderation was a term to appease those who were relating terrorism to Islam.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, for the first time, attended a meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Yi said China and the Islamic world are standing closer now as the world experiences profound changes. In his OIC address, Yi referred to his Pakistani counterpart, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, endearingly as Bhaijan, elder brother, reiterating close ties between both countries. He said China will remain friendly towards Pakistan no matter how the international circumstances and the situation in both countries change.
中方将尊重阿富汗人民自己做出的选择，支持阿富汗实现包容建政、稳健治理，开启和平重建新的篇章。
The OIC is the second largest global organization after the United Nations, with a membership of 57 states across Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, covering nearly all Muslim countries. No mention was made during the meeting of the plight of Uyghur Muslims, who the Chinese government has placed in the largest concentration camps since Nazi Germany. Top Turkish diplomat Mevlut Çavuşoğlu criticized attitudes that normalize bloodshed in the Middle East compared to the war in the Ukraine. Çavuşoğlu spoke during the Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Pakistan. He said he has witnessed people questioning the violence in Ukraine, saying, "This is not the Middle East. This is not Afghanistan. Why is there a bloodshed there?" He added, "For us, the bloodshed in Kharkiv is the same as the bloodshed in Aleppo." U.S. officials said Tuesday it is unclear whether Iran will agree to a nuclear deal, but one could be reached soon. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said that the onus is on Tehran to make difficult decisions. Both countries have been negotiating indirectly through their allies and partners since April 2021 to reach this point, he said. Price said an agreement is neither imminent nor is it certain. Former U.S. President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018 to rekindle negotiations with Iran for a more wide-ranging agreement. That deal had placed unprecedented curbs on Iran's nuclear program and subjected Tehran to international inspections verified by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Amnesty International has called on Egypt to release a veteran journalist detained since May 21, 2021. In a tweet Sunday, the rights group urged Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to free 66-year-old Tawfiq Ghanem. Ghanem has already spent 300 days behind bars for his media work, the agency said. Ghanem is being denied adequate health care for his multiple problems and held in horrid conditions. An Egyptian court on March 19th extended Ghanem's detention for another 45 days. Security forces raided his home in Cairo on May 21st and held him without an arrest or search warrant. His mobile phone and computer were also confiscated. Ghanem worked as the Arabic news editor at Anadolu Agency from 2012 until his retirement in 2015. British Sudanese author LEILA ABOULELA'S writing resonate with diasporic Muslims, particularly Muslim women, who are central characters in her books. Her novels explore themes of belonging, faith, and what it means to be British, rare in popular mainstream fiction written from a Muslim perspective. ABOULELA has written a number of highly acclaimed books. She won the Kane Prize for African Writing in 2000 for one of her short stories, The Museum. Her book, Elsewhere Home, a collection of short stories, won the Satire Society's Fiction Book of the Year award in 2018. ABOULELA'S characters are ordinary people who happen to be Muslim. Their faith is a large part of their identity and woven into her stories. Born in 1964 in Cairo and raised in Khartoum, ABOULELA moved to Aberdeen, Scotland after getting married in her mid-20s. She arrived in the UK in the 1990s during a time of rising anti-Muslim sentiment there. In 2021, Austria saw nearly 2,000 racist attacks, with more than half of them taking place online, according to a new report. That's according to the Vienna-based Civil Courage and Anti-Racism Work, which has released its 2021 racism report. Its analysis shows over 1,000 racist posts were shared on social media and other online platforms. There were 273 racist public attacks in public spaces, and 185 people were subjected to racist treatment in the service and entertainment sectors. There were 112 racist attacks in public institutions and organizations, and 104 such attacks in workspaces, the report added. Also, 84 pieces of racist, hateful rhetoric appeared in print media and politics. According to the report, women face racism twice as often as men in public spaces. Afghanistan's Taliban regime on Wednesday ordered girls' high schools closed. The decision came hours after schools reopened for the first time in nearly 7 months. The policy reversal has sparked heartbreak and confusion. Thousands of girls had resumed lessons for the first time since August, when the Taliban seized control of the country. The Afghan Education Ministry did not offer an explanation, even as officials held a ceremony in the capital Kabul marking the start of the academic year. Ministry spokesman Aziz Ahmed Rayyan told reporters the mindset of people, particularly in villages, is not ready due to cultural restrictions. A Taliban source told AFP the decision came after a meeting late Tuesday by senior officials in the southern city of Kandahar, a Taliban stronghold. Bringing more news stories after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Friends, our world is pulling together like never before. We're making huge sacrifices to keep one another safe. Scientists are working non-stop to develop COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. A vaccine will get our economies moving. It will tell our loved ones we're safe again. But we have challenges we must address. Right now, huge pharmaceutical companies are keeping the vaccine research a secret. They're deciding how many vaccines get made, how much to charge for them, and who gets vaccinated. This will no doubt leave billions of people behind. Pharma companies are putting profit, not people, first. Yet, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is funding their work. We cannot let the CEOs of a handful of pharmaceutical companies decide our future. We need a vaccine that everyone can have free of charge, no matter where you live or whether you're rich or you're poor. We need companies to share all their research so we can make enough safe vaccines for everyone. We need a vaccine owned by all of us. To end this COVID-19 pandemic, we need to pull together once more.
Welcome back. In domestic news today, a federal health agency stopped accepting claims for COVID-19 testing and treatment of uninsured Americans Wednesday due to lack of funding. The money ran out because U.S. lawmakers failed to approve new coronavirus aid. Martin Kramer, a spokesperson for the Health Resources and Services Administration, said lack of funding for COVID-19 needs to have real consequences. Kramer said that the agency has begun shutting down the HRSA COVID-19 uninsured program, which has been reimbursing providers for care since the early days of the pandemic. Nearly 10% of US residents, around 31 million people, don't have any form of health insurance, federal estimates show. The first woman to hold office of US Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, died Wednesday at the age of 84. Albright arrived in the US as a child refugee and rose to become the highest-ranking woman in the government. She helped shape American foreign policy at the end of the 20th century. Former US President Bill Clinton tapped Albright for the job of ambassador to the United Nations. As the US top diplomat, Albright was one of the most influential stateswomen of her generation. She gained notoriety by calmly asserting that the US sanctions on Iraq that caused the death of 500,000 Arab children was worth it in a 1996 interview on news program 60 Minutes. U.S. Representative Mo Brooks was criticized Wednesday after the Alabama Republican claimed former President Donald Trump personally asked him to rescind the 2020 elections. Brooks' public admission was an extraordinary allegation against Donald Trump, government watchdog group Crew said. That's especially given Brooks' silence of the exchange until now. Brooks made the comment in a statement on his U.S. Senate campaign site. It followed news that Trump had yanked his endorsement of Brooks earlier in the day. Brooks, a former Trump ally, was amongst the lawmakers who, in the wake of the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, voted against certifying Joe Biden's presidential win. Brooks also faced a lawsuit over his role in the inciting of the mob that attacked the Capitol. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime? And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September. I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to discuss the NATO summit in Brussels and Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. NATO leadership is meeting in Brussels, and President Biden is there as well. They have issued their statement, and they are asking Russia to comply with March 16 ruling by the UN International Court of Justice and immediately suspend military operations. At the same time, they have made more announcements about preparation, but how much are they going to support Ukraine and where it is heading? To discuss all of these things with us is David Swanson. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, David.
Thank you very much.
David is an author, activist, journalist, and radio host. He is executive director of World Beyond War and campaign coordinator for rootsaction.org. So in America, some on the right are supporting Russia, and some on the left are also supporting Russia. Does any one of them have any chance of prevailing through overall American public opinion?
Yeah, well, it depends what supporting Russia means, but if you mean cheering for war and seeking to support and facilitate and fund Russian war making, I confidently predict no, and I would certainly hope not. I would certainly hope that we could turn U.S. public opinion away from supporting anybody's side in any war. But at this point, with every single U.S. television network and newspaper, with very few exceptional voices supporting Russia's side and none supporting peace, all supporting Ukraine in war making and more weapons to Ukraine and more military support to Ukraine and virtually no voices in favor of negotiations or peace agreements. No, I don't think you're going to see U.S. support for Russian war making anytime soon.
Well, what is the possibility of the larger number of peace movement standing up to stop the war?
It's very difficult because you have peace groups and pro-peace individuals who over the years have opposed particular wars or wars by particular governments or the use of particular weapons. Just as I have friends in Russia who I thought opposed war and they only opposed U.S. wars. They clearly support Russian wars. I have many friends and allies in the United States who I thought opposed wars, but they don't oppose this war. And so it's few and far between that you can find people taking a principled stand against all war making, to the point where it's now considered, if not treasonous, at least insane, to advocate negotiations and a ceasefire and a peace settlement. It's absolutely absurd to ask the government of Ukraine to negotiate peace. You're better off asking them to escalate war. And this is from people I talk to, peace activists, never mind the general public. So we've got a long ways to go.
Now, NATO is saying, and I quote, Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine represents a fundamental challenge to the values and norms that have brought security and prosperity to all on the European continent. Do you agree with that statement?
I might agree with it if you were making it or I were making it, but not if NATO is making it. I mean, the norms and values of slaughtering people in Afghanistan or Libya is somehow diametrically opposed to the norms and values of bombing people in Ukraine. How? Explain it to me. I don't understand it. NATO is not a legal body. It's not a legal entity that should be telling anyone how to obey laws or which laws to obey. It's a criminal enterprise, one of the biggest on earth, that engages in wars that are exactly as criminal as the wars it occasionally denounces that others engage in. So I have no interest in learning peace or morality from NATO.
Well, so do you think Russian aggression have made NATO even stronger?
Oh, there's no question. This is NATO's dream. And there were entities like the National Endowment for Democracy that have pushed for this, like the RAND Corporation that put out a report a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, advocating exactly for this. Hillary Clinton, openly pushes for that. Let's get an Afghanistan-style war that hurt the Soviet Union for modern Russia, and let's get it in Ukraine. Let's keep the war going. Let's have it drag on and on. Of course, at the expense of, the people of Ukraine, at the expense of perhaps 1 million lives, if it drags on like the recent endless U.S. war in Afghanistan. This is of no concern to her, just as it was of no concern to the late Madeleine Albright. But this is what some in the West, many even in the media, openly want, is a war that damages Russia, that potentially results in the overthrow of the Russian government. Never mind what comes next, it'll be a different Russian government, for better or worse, at the expense of the people of Ukraine. And this is what a lot of people in the Ukrainian government want. I did a television show 2 days ago with a member of parliament from Ukraine who wanted no negotiations, no settlements, no possibility of peace, but send us more weapons, send us more weapons. And this was a man just guaranteeing that Russia was soon going to use chemical weapons in his country against the people he supposedly cares about, and seemed pretty confident that Russia was going to use nuclear weapons. Right? So we're supposed to risk all life on Earth for the principle of not negotiating any sort of compromise with the Russian government because it's too evil. Can you picture an Earth devoid of life and happily declare, well, at least we stood up to Russia? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Talking to him, you felt that he is okay with the nuclear warfare?
I would hope he would prefer to avoid it, but he certainly is willing to risk it rather than even consider the possibility of even talking about allowing Russia to have Crimea or a square inch of the Donbas region, even though it has had those areas for 8 years. So it's a matter of principle, I think, or of talking points. You're talking to the world media. The Ukrainian government is supposed to demand more weapons and demand NATO membership, and this is what they do. And part of their pitch for that is to depict Russia as even more evil than it is, and about to use chemical or nuclear weapons. But just as Russia has done NATO the biggest favor in the world in terms of building support for it across Europe and getting more weapons and more bases, Russia is doing itself no favors talking about nuclear war. Vladimir Putin and other top Russian officials have openly said that nuclear war is a possibility, and they have a list of scenarios in which they'll use nuclear war if there is a threat, an existential threat to Russia. So, not that the U.S. doesn't have the exact same policy, but it's absolute madness.
Well, do you see any parallels to the escalation of the Second World War?
I do. I certainly see parallels as well with the First World War, the slow buildup to both of those world wars and to this one, the predictability, the aggravating, predictability of what was coming, and then it coming, and the buildup of weapons on both sides, and the threats and the accusations and the buildup of more weapons on both sides. Now the question is, what sort of an ending will we get? Because you had World War I famously ended with a treaty so cruel and vicious that people, fairly wise people, accurately predicted World War II on the spot. And you had World War II end with a little less vindictiveness, but with the assertion of U.S. imperial dominance and the kickoff of a Cold War. And if what comes out of this is another Treaty of Versailles, then we're going to have more war. And if what comes out of it is another Cold War, then we're going to have proxy wars, we're going to have arms races, we're going to have weapons buildups, we're going to have the absolute impossibility of governments cooperating on pandemics or climate change or environmental crises or the elimination of nuclear weapons. So we need something better than how those wars were handled.
Well, thank you so much, David, for your thoughts on this very critical juncture in human history. I mean, it could accelerate, and before the fossil fuel destroys us, nuclear fuels might destroy it.
Yes, indeed. That's what we're up against, and nothing could be more important than reducing that risk.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.